Welcome back, focused learners. Okay, so today we're looking at something absolutely monumental. Picture this. A small American town gets hit by a nuclear disaster. Houses are completely destroyed, neighborhoods are flooded out, and the military is deployed to rescue survivors from the wreckage. But here's the catch. This isn't real life. This is actually a hyper-realistic 400-hectare mock city built from the ground up in Indiana. The US Army literally recruits hundreds of actors and deploys massive resources just to simulate a single catastrophic day. It's a stunning display of preparation, and it immediately establishes the immense, almost unimaginable scale of the organization we're breaking down in today's explainer. All right, let's dive right into this. We're going to follow the entire life cycle of a soldier today. We'll start with the recruitment machine, push through basic training, check out the elite ranger competition, step back into military high schools, and finally, confront the reality of veteran life. Now, to really grasp this life cycle, you first have to understand the sheer mind-boggling size of the machine we're talking about, 1.5 million. That is the staggering active workforce of the US Army. It's a massive global presence spread across literally every continent, from Iraq to Korea and Italy to Australia.
And keeping a massive workforce like that operational, it requires a colossal financial engine. We're talking $700 billion. That is the annual budget of the United States military, which is just an astronomical figure that sets the stage for everything we're about to cover.
So let's look at stage one, the military recruitment machine. This is a billion-dollar effort dedicated to replacing 150,000 soldiers every single year. When recruiters sit down with 18-year-old high schoolers, especially those in underprivileged areas, they aren't just, selling patriotism. They're throwing out massive financial and educational lifelines. Take teenagers like Owen and Carter, for example. The military's offering them full health care, housing, meals, about $4,000 a year in college tuition assistance, and, get this, up to a $34,000 bonus just for joining the infantry. The catch? You just have to sign the contract, pass the aptitude tests, and survive combat training. For a lot of young folks, it's an incredibly practical way to build a secure future. And these benefits, they really resonate across the board in American society. In fact, women make up 16% of the US Army's workforce. That's actually one of the highest rates of female military participation anywhere in the world. This includes a lot of single mothers who enlist specifically because, well, the long-term stability, guaranteed housing, and medical care, those are powerful incentives when you're trying to guarantee a solid future for your kids. But, of course, that shiny recruitment pitch eventually gives way to a pretty harsh reality. Stage 2, surviving basic combat training, where civilians are transformed into fighters. Every year, 50,000 youths arrive at Fort Jackson, and that jarring transformation begins with 12-hour days and, screaming drill sergeants. But once you actually make it through that brutal training, active duty life presents a really fascinating dynamic. Take the lifestyle of someone like Sergeant David Costello. The Army basically provides total financial comfort. We're talking free rent in a massive 4-bedroom house on base, absolutely zero utility or maintenance bills, plus free access to on-base water parks and hospitals. It's wild. But in exchange, the Army demands absolute constant availability. Soldiers face mandatory family relocations every 2.5 years, not to mention grueling 9 to 10-month overseas combat deployments. It's an environment so demanding that many spouses, like David's wife, actually opt to homeschool their kids just to keep some semblance of stability when they're constantly moving across state lines and continents. Now, for those who want to push past the standard military life, they move further up the ladder. Stage 3, the elite ranger competition. This is all about finding the absolute best of the best. If you want to see intense, look at the best ranger competition. It's a relentless 3-day marathon with literally zero sleep. At hour 0, it kicks off with a 10-kilometer run in full combat gear. By hour 12, they're tackling insane obstacle courses and close combat shooting. Hour 36 is all about helicopter assault insertions, and it finally wraps up at hour 72 after covering a staggering total distance of 112 kilometers. And what's crazy here is that even hardened combat veterans, guys like teammates Yoshua and Ryan, who survived tours in the mountains of Afghanistan, they can find themselves eliminated on the very first day. It requires absolutely flawless physical and mental perfection. Okay, let's step back for a second, because this intense demand for discipline and structure doesn't always start at age 18. Stage 4 takes us inside military high schools, looking at teenage discipline. Get a load of this quote. I'm the company commander. Everybody in this company has to listen to me. If you don't, you just get punished. Now, those aren't the words of a seasoned adult general. That is Michael, a 17-year-old high school cadet. It completely highlights the intense, adult-like authority handed straight to teenagers. And the wild part? Parents are willingly paying $34,000 a year for their kids to experience this relentless, peer-led discipline. Just to give you an idea of what that actually looks like, let's walk through a cadet's typical morning. At 6 a.m. sharp, they wake up and immediately stand at attention in their pajamas. They have exactly 30 minutes to shave, dress, and fold their beds with perfect 45-degree hospital corners. By 6:30 a.m., they're undergoing a strict uniform inspection administered by their peer commanders. The Academy enforces a standard of perfection that is so incredibly strict, 15% of the students end up dropping out simply because they just want to live like normal teenagers.
Which brings us to our final chapter, Stage 5, the reality of veteran life. What actually happens when these highly trained individuals take off the uniform and return to civilian society? Well, this return creates a pretty stark dichotomy. On one hand, you have folks like Ellie Crane, an ex-Navy SEAL who leveraged his intense focus and combat skills to build a $1.2 million business selling .50 caliber bottle openers. He's living this grand desert villa, completely monetizing his veteran status. But then, on the flip side, consider Zook, an ex-Marine battling severe PTSD who finds alternative therapy through the camaraderie of the Sons of Blackwater Motorcycle Club. It's a really striking contrast, right? Monumental entrepreneurial success on one end versus a desperate search for refuge from trauma on the other.
And we really need to understand that this trauma is remarkably widespread. 500,000. That's the official number of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans diagnosed by the military with combat-related trauma. For 500,000 people, their everyday reality is an ongoing battle with depression and recurring nightmares long after the war is actually over.
Which brings us to an incredibly sobering statistic. 6,000. That is the number of American veterans who end their own lives every single year. It's a suicide rate that's almost twice that of the general population. It is quite literally a quiet, tragic epidemic happening thousands of miles away from any battlefield.
But these veterans, they absolutely refuse to be ignored. Organized by Mac, a 70-year-old Vietnam vet, 25,000 bikers roared straight into Washington, D.C. They drove their motorcycles right up to the Capitol, physically shaking the ground with their engines to demand a major national plan against veteran suicides. They are fighting tooth and nail to make sure their fallen brothers and sisters aren't just forgotten by the government they served.
Which leaves us with a really profound question to chew on as we wrap up this explainer. When the uniform finally comes off, how does a nation truly repay the psychological cost of its defense? We've traveled from a billion-dollar recruitment machine to comfortable base lives, all the way to the harsh realities of elite combat and the deeply individual human toll. It's a life cycle that really forces us to ponder the true cost of maintaining the most powerful army in human history. Thanks for joining me on this one, Focus Learners, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.